In my palette, I have some of my colors of the skin set. I have ivory light, shiny skin tone, pumpkin, pale carmine red, and middle brown. I also add a little bit of tallow blue, the red shade, the cold yellow, and the yellow oxide. I'm creating now a base coat that is going to be kind of tanned flesh to create the base coat for the skin, as we have seen in the examples. And I'm going to paint with it's a thin layer, but it has to be enough thick to cover with a couple of layers to be a bit consistent. And now I'm adding a bit of tallow blue and pale carmine red to create the first shadow that I will place in the deeper areas of the skin. It's going to be a very pale skin tone, but I want to save and paint over the areas down under the jaw, create the areas that are supposed to be a bit more darker. It's a reference. I always work with the sketch, so I don't have to be super precise in this part of the process, but at least having a clear idea of what I want to create. I'm adding a little bit more of red on the sides to get much more flesh gradations. And as you can see, I paint also the lips to create a reddish tone in there, in the sides. If you see that this layer is not enough thick, you can paint a couple more. It depends on the consistency of the paint. As you can see now, I'm doing it again, and I'm creating a much more uniform layer to work on the skin. I'm saving the eyes because I will paint them later. I'm not painting that part much, not the same as the rest of the skin. And once I have this uniform base coat for the flesh, I can start working on the first scheme of lights that I will also show you now, how I sketch the different parts of the face in order to get an idea of the volumes according to the light source. I'm using now a little bit of pumpkin and a little bit of this yellow ochre, pale carmine red to compensate, not to have too much yellowish tone. It has to be a bit more red, but light. It can help you also having on your palette a little bit of orange instead of mixing the red and the oxide. I'm starting with the cheeks and this side of the nose, creating this kind of triangle, these two sides, and connecting the nose, nostrils, upper the lips, the forehead is going to be a full light area, so I cover totally, and as you can see, I can add a little bit more of light, so I'm using under the eyes, in the eyebrows, and again on this cheek, creating a general approach and a general scheme of volumes. Also on the sides, on the jaw, I create a first light. See that I am trying to block the face. It's a bit round, so what I'm trying to do is block different kind of much more geometrical shapes that help me to understand much better how these volumes work. As I do in all my process, you will see that the sketch is very useful when you don't know exactly how things are, how the volumes work. It helps to create a map to later define much better. And here I'm adding a little bit more red to start blending a little bit the first layer and the first light. As you can see now, we have a very pale skin. I just saved the deeper shadows, and it's time to keep working on the contrast, adding shiny skin tone on the center of the face and a little bit of pumpkin. We have to find the right tone for this light, and once we have it, it's just about apply on the right area. The more we invest on that mix, it will help us to not have to correct every time. As I did first, I paint again this light on the side of the face. I reduce a little bit the amount of yellow. It's normal that during our painting process we have some corrections, because when we think on the palette that a color is going to work, this doesn't mean that then in the figure it really does. So I check on the figure and then I correct it if it's something that is not exactly as I expected. Keep drawing. These volumes around the lips are so important, especially to give much more expression to the figure. As you can see on the neck, I saved some parts because it's going to be covered by the armor, so I need to save that shadow area to explain much better, communicate that this is not going to be hidden by the light source. I keep drawing on the sides. You see that the scheme now is much more clear. We see a transition. I'm adding a little bit more of this pale carmine red that is perfect to paint lips. It's a perfect mix to paint lips, also on the eyes. And as I want to have a good frame for the skin, now I'm going to mix red and a little bit of middle brown, and I'm going to base coat the hair. You can see nothing special, but it helps much better to see the color on that area. And I'm mixing a little bit of violet with that mix that I used for the hair to paint the eyelashes, to define much better the deeper shadows on the eyes, around the eyes, especially now the eyebrows, and the line that separated that shadow between the lips there in the mouth. This helps very much to define the expression of the face. Don't miss it. And adding reddish tones around the nose. These carnations help us to give much more alive sensation to that face. Now I'm creating a cold gray, you'll see, to base coat the eyes. I don't want to have a high light in there now, it's just much deeper. Later we will paint, also I paint the teeth, this separation. I want to have a deeper gray, so later when I use pure white to create the light spots there in the eye, it will help me to see much better that contrast. Keep working on the light, keep working on the light of the skin, adding a bit more shiny skin tone. This yellow and white help me to compensate in order to find the precise tone I want. This color, this skin set, it helps very much to define a general approach for skin tones, but we can always modify using the primary, using the primary colors of the basic set, and bring that tone to the exact proportion we're looking for. I'm highlighting there in the forehead, on the side of the face, and see that I'm not thinking much on the blending at this moment. I'm just thinking about the contrast and defining in a proper way the volumes of the face. Now it's very clear, this scheme. You see the progression. I'm working on the definition of the different features of the skin on the face, and I'm not worrying much about that blending. It's going to be at the end of the process. Now what I want is to block the different color areas, set all these parts, and then once finished I will put everything together by blending using glazes, stippling, and other techniques. Defining these volumes around the eyes, it gives much more expression. There are some micro volumes that we do not see on the sculpture, but we have to know that goes there. That's why it's so important, the study of different portraits, as we did at the beginning of this video, that we saw different images that gives us the clue. So when we are starting to paint these natural skin tones, we can define different kind of volumes that helps us to give much more realism to our painting. I'm highlighting very much now, bringing the skin tone to the much pale aspect, and later if I have over flash that area, I will just glaze over it with different color skins, much more in reds and orange, to get a middle tone back. And I'm painting now this side of the face that is going to be deeper, it's going to be darker, so I use much more grays, and you can mix reds and with black and white to get a grayish tone for that areas that are not that direct hidden by the light. Now I'm going to focus on the cheeks using the side of the brush and glazing a little bit, adding these tones that helps us to have a much more alive sensation of that skin. On the other side we do the same, looking for a round shape there on the cheeks, on the side of the forehead, playing with the basic skin set, using the pumpkin and pale carmine to define these reddish tones around the cheeks, and also painting the light of the lips in here in the center, not to hide this light. It's going to be just a tone. Later we will save a stronger heat of light just to create that shine. By the time I have to start blending, what I do is paint with a shorter stroke. I'm applying less paint and I'm trying to be much more precise, just adding small portions of paint in the areas where I want to create that blending. I'm adding a little bit more of middle brown to paint those areas behind the neck where I don't want to have much light. I need to blend that part a little bit. Also in the side of the face, as you can see, I'm adding a little bit of brown to have this tone but a little bit more desaturated. What I don't want is to make a shine that area that is supposed to be darker. I don't want to make that area that shiny as the main part on the forehead that is going to be much more extreme. I've placed first idea of the eyes are going to be blue. You know that when we have to paint the eyes, we probably will have to correct many times. This is my first approach of the eyes, but maybe later I change it if they don't match with the idea I have of the figure. By now, just a couple of circles in blue and then a couple of white spots in the center just to define a little bit the expression of the side of the figure. This helps me very much to understand the character, and also it gives me much more definition while I keep painting the rest of the skin. At this moment, I'm working with a very low consistency. It's a kind of transparent, a little bit of tones in there that help me to blend very smooth that areas of the skin. You can mix with inks, for example, if you're looking for much more shiny tones, not matte finish on the skin. This is an option that we can explore. But in this case, I'm just using the Kimera Kolors, the basic set and the skin set to put all these things together and create that sensation of flesh tone on the side of the face. Slow and smooth strokes to define much better the volume on the jaw. So you can see this part of the face, it has a bit of volume, so we have to represent it, but we don't want to make it as strong as the light we have in the center. So we have to represent it according to the light source that we have placed, the light that we have placed here in the center, around the eye, for example, the forehead, the nose. The way I am moving the brush, it also helps me to create a kind of texture. This is very important because we want to represent not only the colors on the surface, but also part of the texture that it has, okay? And now I am adding a little bit of highlight in the iris of the face just to create that strong light that will help me to understand much better how it shines, how the eyes shine, the white around the iris of the eye, and then adding the tone there in the center to make the eyes much more realistic. I have changed the palette and I want to keep working. Now it's time to work on the hair. As I have defined very much the skin, I need to see what's around, and I start working with the yellow, the middle brown, the red and the shiny skin tone, and I start working, creating these strokes over the surface of the hair. Look the movement of my brush, look how I try to paint different kind of packs of hair, moving the brush, creating some lines, and I will focus on the center of that waves that represent the falling of the hair, also considering the position of the light source that I have placed on the other part of the face. This first layer has to be consistent. Look that it's thick, but not that much, so it does not allow me to stroke fluid. Okay, you have to find a balance between the water and the paint, the amount of paint that you have on your brush, so you can stroke properly. I'm creating this kind of reflections that will give a very aesthetic sensation to the hair. It's going to be ginger, and I want to paint a very intense red on that hair, painting the areas where it's supposed to be much more shiny and saving the other areas, the base coat that was supposed to be the darker part. It's not going to be the deepest part in there, it's going to be a bit more highlighted later, but we have to paint lights and shadows and middle tones at the same time. So it's time to create this grisaille, this highlight for the hair. It's not going to be that white, of course, but it will help me to push much more the color that I will paint over it after this grisaille that I'm doing on the hair. It helps me to define the areas where the color is going to shine much more, and I'm doing exactly the same, doing these strokes in lines, creating the sensation of packs of hair and also creating the sensation of reflection on that areas. I don't have to be much precise now, it's just to creating a brighter base coat, so when I paint over it using a bit more orange and red, the color, it will shine much more without losing that intensity, that saturation that we are looking for. Now, working with the orange and a little bit of warm yellow, you see that the shine of that orange is much powerful when we paint over these bright areas that we have sketched on the hair. We have to combine thick and much diluted layers, so we play with the transparency that we are looking for. Now adding a little bit of black and violet, mixing with red, I'm going to paint the deeper shadows on the hair, that areas that are supposed to be hidden from the light, especially in the opposite side of the face, that is supposed to be the one that is not that affected by the light, and see how it helps to frame. We can see actually now that casted shadow on the side of the neck that communicates the effect of the light coming from her right side of the face. Outlining and separating the hair from the skin, it gives us much more definition and helps us to clean much better the area. All this part, the bottom of the hair, it's going to be much more dark than red, but we don't want to work with black. We are working with a deeper version of that red, in this case using violet. Let's base coat that golden tiara that she has in here. It's like a crown. I'm not sure about it, but I need to see how the light affects in that part, because it's not going to be only the skin what gives us a match finish sensation. It's about working on the elements that I have around that will give us the sensation of that face much more finished. And also it will explain much better the different reflection of the materials that we have in there. The metal is going to be much more shiny and much more powerful than the skin. So we have to exaggerate that a little bit more, especially this side. And we can compare the different levels of light and gives us a sensation of that different materials that we have. Some highlights this side using this warm yellow mixed with white. I focus much more on this side of this gem that it has, or this part of the center of the crown. And I add a little bit of orange for the light in this shadow, because it's supposed to be a reflection of the hair, as you can see. This gives us much more integration between the different elements. Everything reflects not only the light, but the colors that there are around, and we have to explain that on the materials to give that or create that illusion of materials that reflect not only light, but also colors, the light that comes from those colors. Definition and highlights to explain much better that shiny gold that we have in there. I also want to talk about this detail, the separation between the two parts of the hair, where the hair grows. I will paint with a general, like the middle tone of the skin. You see, in this view is much easy to understand. I paint that in hair, so it seems that that part is where the hair is growing, and I can see the skin in the line between two sides of the hair. It's time also to keep highlighting. Now that I have the golden sketched, I can work much accurate here, that lights on the hair. I can paint this much more precise line to define much better the highlight on the hair. It's not going to be the final light because I have to paint the rest of the figure, but at this moment it gives us a clear image of how strong this shine on the hair is going to be. Be careful not to lose to match that saturation of the hair. We want to have it a powerful orange, but if we add too much white, we will lose that part. So we have to compensate. We can also mix and glaze over it with much more pure colors, with red and orange, to get back that tone if at some point we are losing the shine and we are using the proper tone of the hair that we want to represent.